Before we start the video at all, before I say anything else, I do need to warn each and every one of you that if you are in any way in a bad spot, if your mood hasn't been great, I do urge you to not watch this video. Make sure that you are stable and comfortable. And we'll be talking about childhood trauma, as the title suggests. So, make sure that you're okay before you watch this. So that being said, trauma, specifically childhood trauma, is, I don't want to say universal to the trans experience, but damn near universal. Most of us have dealt with it in one form or another. Usually it's through, well, not usually, but I mean everybody's experience is a little bit different. If you happen to be one of those people who didn't get bullied or assaulted, didn't have unaccepting parents or things of that nature, and everything went pretty smoothly for you, then that is fantastic. I'm really, really happy for you. And I feel like this video is still for you because it's important to understand that the vast majority of your trans siblings have dealt with some form or another of severe trauma. Yeah, so it's still for you. My hope out of this video is to help you understand that you're not alone in the bullshit that you've gone through. Most of us have dealt with it in some way. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the things that I went through, and part of what made me who I am, or whatever. Yeah, so hopefully you can relate, and you'll understand why it's important that we not let the trauma define us, why we need to acknowledge that it's there, so that we can take power over it, so we can take control of it, rather than it controlling us. It is a part of who we are. It certainly shaped who we are today, but we own the trauma. The trauma doesn't own us, and that's an important distinction. So, for me, when I was growing up, my father, my mother was a different story, but my father was extremely unaccepting. When I came out to my mom relatively recently, she told me a story that I had never heard before. That when I was 3 years old, my father just lost his shit because I wanted to play dress up with my older sisters who lived with us at the time. Because I wanted to play dress up with them, and he just lost his goddamn mind because I was a boy. I shouldn't be wearing dresses. And my mom tried to stand up to him of, what else is he going to play with? He's got 2 older sisters. So, as an example, as I got older, I don't want to say it got worse, but my father wanted to constantly pressure me into boy stuff. He wanted me to play baseball, which I fucking hate baseball. It was just like the worst experience. I went to like 2 practices, and after that I refused. I would go because I had to go to practice, but I wouldn't participate. I'd just take off as soon as I got there. We'd have games and I'd just walk off. Like, fuck it, I don't want to do it. But let me explain a little bit about my family situation so that it makes sense when I talk about siblings. Um, I am technically an only child. I do talk about having sisters regularly, so let me explain what that means. My parents both came into the marriage with children who were significantly older than me. They left the house for one reason or another when I was still quite young. So I grew up I grew up as an only child. When I'm on stream and I talk about my sister and my brother-in-law, they come in and they'll come in to chat and whatnot occasionally. I'm actually not talking about biological siblings because I don't. One of my sisters, my oldest sister, half sister, I don't have any contact with at all. She is just an absolutely abhorrent human being, and I want nothing to do with her. My other sister I have very limited contact with. We're friends on Facebook, but that's really about it. I haven't seen her in years, haven't had any kind of meaningful contact or conversation with her in also a very long time. However, when I was 5 years old, I became my best friend now. We met in preschool at 5 years old. His birthday's the day after mine. And we essentially grew up together. And his little sister is 5 years younger. So I essentially grew up with her, and I call her my sister. And her husband, I call my brother-in-law. And my best friend I regularly refer to as my brother. So I'm an only child, but I have multiple siblings. It's like I don't have any children, but I have multiple children. That's a whole other story. Numerous godkids and a stepchild. Yeah, anyway, you don't care. That's unrelated. So back to the bad stuff. My I didn't necessarily have a close family. I didn't have a support structure. I was very, very alone as a child. And my father was just an absolute terrible person on every level. And he died when I was 13, and that ended that period of just absolute garbage. I didn't have... I was very isolated. I didn't have anyone to go to when things went bad because everything was always bad. In retrospect, I realized it took this guy dying for me to realize that he was someone that I could go to, and that would be my best friend and his sister's parents, who I spent... It wasn't until I was a teenager that I really spent dramatic amounts of time with them, which was after my father died. But when his dad passed away a couple years ago was when I realized that I could have leaned on them when everything was going to shit for me, but I didn't. It never occurred to me until I was an adult relatively recently. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story to help kind of illustrate how alone I was. When I was probably about 10 years old. I'm not 100% certain on that. I was attacked one night by a friend of my parents. Before this moment right now, I have never actually spoken aloud a single word about that event. I was brutally attacked as a child, and I had no one to go to. I walked home in the dark. I was probably 2 or 3 miles from home is where he lived. I walked home in the dark, and I screamed and cried in the dark on the side of the road in the middle of the country, and I had absolutely no one I could go to. And I have relived that attack so many times. It came up again last night, which is what made me want to do this video now. And it kept me up for many hours, kind of reliving what happened. It's one of many terrible memories, but it happened outside the family unit, I think is one of the reasons it stands out to me. But yeah, so I was utterly alone. There was no one I could go to with terrible traumatic events like that. Because terrible traumatic events like that were happening at home. One of my one of my earliest memories is my dad beating my sister on my mom's side, beating her with a belt. She probably did some stupid kid thing. She was like probably 7 or 8 years old at the time. You know, kids do stupid shit all the time. I know. I have enough of them around. And it wasn't uncommon to hear things like, oh, well, you've been bad enough, you get the buckle this time on the belt. I mean, just, I could go on at length. But to have that as one of my very first memories is, kind of shows you what was going on. And so to have elements of heteronormativity piled upon me, there was these expectations that, you know, my father definitely wanted a boy. He didn't want a boy who was gay either, which I got him in the end. He may have died, but I turned his only son into an e-girl. Or I'm in the process of doing that, so fuck him. A lot of... I won't get into too many details about him. I think I've illustrated enough of why I have so much childhood trauma. When he passed away, I was 13 when he died. And I had a hard time reconciling the fact that I wasn't sad that he died, which I didn't understand. You know, if someone dies, you're supposed to be upset. You're supposed to be sad. I was, if anything, I was relieved. Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it now that I think about it. And like a lot of people were kind of trying to console me, and for a few years afterwards, people were like, oh, I'm sure it has to do with, like, you're upset now because of your dad's death. And it was always like, no, like, I don't care. Like, what, why? No. My dad also had a thing. I couldn't pierce both my ears, which of course I have them pierced now. I pierced them shortly after he died. Because guys had to have, this is a holdover. My dad was older when I died, so this is a product of the 70s, his homophobic upbringing. Guys, I'm trying to remember which side it was. Guys could only have one ear pierced. Yeah, it was the left side. Guys could only have the left side ear pierced because piercing your right ear meant that you were gay. And only faggots pierce their right ear. There was a saying, left is right, right is wrong, which is fucking stupid. Turns out I was gay, but not the way he thought. Just, anyway, I'm sure a lot of you that, or at least portions of that resonate. And that's why I wanted to give the warning up top. This carried over childhood trauma, what is clearly PTSD from a lot of childhood trauma, coupled with bipolar type 2 disorder, which I will get to that in just a moment, along with gender dysphoria, was kind of a perfect storm of terrible. I'll get to that in a bit, though. So the trans experience tends to include a lot of childhood trauma. And I hope by sharing, not all of it, obviously, we'd be here for months if we were, Floyd really wants to be included, so if everybody wants to say hi to him. So hopefully by sharing some of that, you can understand that most of us go through it. So you're not alone. There are other people out there who have dealt with it. Dude, I'm recording. Jump cut, I need to let the cat out. Dude, come on, I'm recording. Why are you yelling, dude? I'm in the middle of something. Come on. It's nothing like a cat to ruin the flow, ruin the mood. Well, we probably needed a little lightning. So yeah, I'm sure many of you have gone through similar things. Most of us have a lot of this as part of the trans experience. So you're not alone. And if you haven't, then amazing for you. And but now you understand perhaps that your trans siblings have gone through a lot of things. Yeah, my notes say your trauma may vary. It's true. So that led to I became very, very destructive and suicidal in that mental care. I have had almost nonstop counseling since I was probably 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. So for quite some time. But let's talk about right now. I still have bipolar type 2 disorder, which is, it's just like regular bipolar, except I don't tend to get manic phases. I'll get hypomanic, so I'll get a little bit manic, but still manageable. So I'm more prone to the depressed side of things, and it'll just kind of come out of nowhere. Pile gender dysphoria onto that, and a constant sense of something is wrong. There is some major problem, and that problem is with me. I am the source of some major problem. But not having that be all subconscious, not having any way of quantifying or explaining or really understanding what is causing that, causes the bipolar to get a billion times worse. That's why suicide rates are so high with trans people. I mentioned it in a previous video, and I, again, did not look up the statistics because I didn't want to get more depressed. I was having a rough enough day. So, with the quarantine on, it is taxing in the extreme for everyone. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about a thing. I think it was just not very long ago. Anyway, a YouTuber by the name of Steve Cash, he did the Talking Kitty Cat videos. He had bipolar disorder and was having a hard time getting through the videos. And at the end of his last video, he had this to say.
Hey guys, I'm Steve Cash. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. And to those of you who are wondering why it takes me so long sometimes between videos to get anything out, it is because I have bipolar disorder, which means I spend sometimes, a couple months to 6 months or longer stuck in a really deep depression. And it comes and goes, and I don't really have any control over it. So when it is taking me a long time to get a video out, I'm sorry. It's just that, I'm struggling as well. So either way, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.
So then nothing from him for a few months, and suddenly news that he was dead by suicide. I can't speak to his situation. I didn't really know a lot about him. But I suspect if my mental stability is breaking down under the stresses of this situation, then I have no doubt that his was as well. I wasn't like, his death didn't affect me specifically in that I didn't know him. I had only discovered his stuff, a few months ago. It was hilarious. I really enjoyed his stuff, but it wasn't the kind of, and he wasn't like the level of celebrity or whatever person that I was invested in that his death would specifically affect me. But it was the idea of what happened. It was the realization that someone with the same issues that I have, someone who was roughly the same age I am, died because of the situation he was in. And that was triggering. That did not help my mood and my stability at all. So in these times, I know I keep saying this, in these times it is so important to connect with people. Reach out to your friends, and not just reach out to your friends who have gotten quiet or whatever. Reach out to your friends, all of them. Your friends, your family, anyone who's close to you. Reach out to them and check in with them. See how they're doing. I said it, I think it was on Twitter, I said that doing this could save a life, and that life could be yours. If you don't have people that you know personally, if you don't have those strong interpersonal relationships, then reach out to your resources online. There are so many great resources. Go on Reddit or Twitter or any of these places that have a strong trans community, and I can almost guarantee that they will pile on and tell you you're amazing and give you all the reassurance that you need. That has been my experience. So this has gone on long enough, and I'm going to have a complete breakdown if I keep going. So I don't have the energy to do the normal end of video stuff. So I will see you guys next time. If you're interested in seeing how bipolar compartmentalization works, I'm recording this right before I record the 2-month HRT update video, which, if you're watching this as part of the series, was posted last week. But I had to get this out, so if you're curious to see what bipolar compartmentalization looks like, watch this and then watch that. I know that I recorded that maybe an hour tops after this one. So I'll see you guys next time.